The following program has been pre-recorded, so please don't call in at this time. If you wish to participate in the program, tune in at 5 p.m. every Wednesday for A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good evening, fellow humans. This is Wayne Parker with A Pause for Thought here on Baton Rouge Community Radio, 96.9 FM here in Baton Rouge. And just to let everybody know, we are now live again. We are live again tonight after a bit of a hiatus for me. But we are live, and you can call in, and please do, 343-9927, 343-9927. We'd love to hear your input on the topic of the evening. And the topic of the evening is a program called 287G, in which your sheriff's department uses your tax money to enforce ICE's laws and do their work for them. So we're going to talk about that tonight. We thought you might be interested in it, and by we, I mean Natalia Dixon. She's a guest with us in the studio today. She's an immigration attorney. She was born in Brazil and raised in Brazil. She's been in Baton Rouge for 8 years, and that includes her obtaining a legal degree. And she is now an immigration attorney practicing for 2 years in immigrant removal defense. And in those 2 years, she's handled about 200 immigration cases. Welcome to the show, Natalie.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me tonight, Wayne. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all.
Well, we're glad to have you, and I hope we can get as much information out as we can. Tell us quickly, what exactly is a 287G program?
All right. So a 287G agreement, it's basically an agreement between our local enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security, or ICE, make it simplified. So the local police officers, they collaborate with the federal government to enforce federal immigration laws.
Okay. And there, as far as the 287G program, there are 4 basic types that I've seen here, and the only 2 that are still being used in the country right now are the jail enforcement method, where deputized officers may interrogate alleged non-citizens who have been arrested on state or local charges and may place immigration detainees on, they may detain them on detainers, that's it, for subject to removal from the country. And then there's the warrant service officer model, which ICE trains, authorizes, and selects the state and local law enforcement officers and a few other things there. But here in Baton Rouge, we are using the jail enforcement model, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And can you give us a better summary than I just did?
Well, you did it perfectly, actually. The jail enforcement model, which is the one that we use here in East Baton Rouge, and also 2 other parishes here in Louisiana, which are the only 3 in the whole state that have 287G agreements with ICE. So it basically, like, the officers, they interrogate, they're allowed to interrogate and arrest and investigate non-citizens or people that they believe to be non-citizens. So they're actually able to ask them questions as to their status over here in the United States and their citizenship.
Okay, so I guess if an immigrant-looking individual was pulled over and they had a thick accent and just happened to have left their driver's license at home, well, I guess they would do their background check on them right then and find that they do have a license, though. So that wouldn't be a problem, I guess.
Well, I mean, theoretically they're supposed to, but not so long ago we had a case of a U.S. citizen that was actually held through ICE custody for about 2 weeks, I believe, until they could actually determine that he is a U.S. citizen and release him.
Right. So, okay, so there's that problem. But
yes.
In any case, and this kind of plays on that point, how do law enforcement agencies get into such programs? Are they asked by ICE? Are they told by ICE? Or
Right. So the approach can happen from both sides. So either the Department of Homeland Security or ICE they approach the local enforcement, the sheriff's office or the city police or whatever. Or it can also be the opposite way. So if the sheriff is interested in this program, they can also contact DHS or the Department of Homeland Security and engage in these types of programs.
They can file an application, actually, is what they
Absolutely,
do. They
yes.
apply for it and ask, will you give us 287G authority? And, of course, they're more than willing to, for lots of reasons.
That is correct.
But,
we will not allow the federal government to intervene here in our state police or local enforcement unless they're invited to.
Okay, yeah, right. So we have to give permission, or the sheriff has to give permission. Who's paying for all this?
Us.
Us? What do you mean?
Well, we're funding this program. The 287G agreement allows, and I can even quote myself in this. The 287G is actually an article from the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, and it reads like this. The Department of Homeland Security may enter into an agreement with a state in which an officer or employee of the state or a political subdivision is qualified to perform the function of an immigration officer in investigation, apprehension, and detention, and may carry out such function at the expense of the state or the political subdivision. So, we are working for the federal government for free. We're paying with our taxpayer money. We're funding this program and housing these folks, and
we're paying for it.
Exactly.
The taxpayers of East Baton Rouge.
Exactly.
Parish, okay. Well, this is making our communities safer, though, isn't it?
Well, that's actually the point that the sheriff's office has made before, that it makes our community safer and all that. But I will disagree on that issue. And we did have research performed on this before, and many other sources has also cited the communities that have 287G agreements, they're not safer. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. It doesn't make our parish any safer.
Well, for one thing, if they're devoting our tax resources to processing and researching and looking into the backgrounds of various people for immigrant violations, they're not taking care of our communities and patrolling and doing the things that we are paying them to do.
Right. We're using our resources in something that we were not really aware. So
that's another thing. If we weren't even asked ahead of time, the taxpayers were not asked ahead of time, are you willing to pay for this program? I just found out about this program through getting involved in immigration activists, here.
Right, and we've been, East Baton Rouge Parish has been on this program for some time right now, and it's very important to let everybody know that this type of agreement can be terminated at any time. So if ICE doesn't have any interest in keep going with this program, or if the sheriff decides that he does not want to be engaged in this program any longer, both parties can terminate at any time.
Right, and that plays to part of your activism where you were trying to get that repealed. Exactly.
And in fact, our sheriff chose to renew this agreement. It was just renewed on June 30th, if I'm not mistaken. This program with the ICE, the 287G program, was literally just renewed. And most people don't even know. So if you ask them, oh, hey, have you heard about the 287G program? They're not really aware of what is a 287G program.
No, right. And as far as communities being made safer, our communities being made safer, along with the sheriff's deputies ignoring their responsibilities to us and focusing on immigrants, they also have a problem with alienating all immigrants, basically, in our whole community and preventing them or causing them to be afraid to come out and speak about crimes, because somebody may have somebody in their family who might be illegal, they don't know, and they don't want to find out, of course, and they certainly don't want the police to find out. So if they have information on a crime, they're not going to go to the police with it for fear of causing problems for themselves. And there are a number of reputable law enforcement agencies who have pointed that out. I'm looking here at a study put out by the American Immigration Council, and it states that the Police Executive Research Forum interviewed Maricopa County law enforcement executives, and they said, quote, the 287G enforcement poisoned the relationship between law enforcement and Latinos, hindering general law enforcement efforts within the Latino community. So, you know, people who are committing crimes, even non-immigrants that commit crimes in immigrant communities, aren't going to get reported, or are likely not to get reported.
Right, exactly, and that's a huge point in our advocacy towards the end of the 287G program. You know, it doesn't make our parish any safer. It discourages our parish residents that are undocumented to report crime in their neighborhoods. It increases, actually, the criminality in their neighborhood. It destroys the credibility, the trust that these parish residents have in the police. If they're undocumented, they're afraid. They're not going to call the police to report what's going on next door because they're simply afraid that the police is going to show up, pick them up, and boom, next day they're in immigration detention center.
For instance, a woman is raped, a woman who is perhaps in the country and undocumented. She's raped. She can't go to the police about that. And the guy that committed the crime knows that. Is that not true?
Well, I actually... I mean, I can't say as to that because, you know, I do believe that victims should come forward. But I am more hesitant when it comes to witnessing a crime as to, like, the police just simply thinking that this immigrant could be involved in it. And, you know, because of language barriers and the sort of issues, they can be simply put in a police car. And next thing it's, you know, oh, wait, you have an ICE hold. I determined that you do not have a legal status over here. And next day you're at the detention center in immigration proceedings. So I do believe that this certainly makes our community weaker. Our bonds are weakened by 287G agreements. But as to reporting crimes as a victim, it's extremely important that people continue to come forward with it.
Okay, but I know that. I understand that. But would they not still be reluctant if they could get deported as a result?
Well, if I believe so, but as someone, yeah, it's hard whenever we can really like put ourselves in the place of someone. But I would imagine that a person would have a certain type of difficulty, not only going through the trauma of being a victim of a crime, but also reporting it to the police, afraid that, you know, God knows what's going to happen to me if I report this crime.
And the reason I brought that up is there was a spokesperson for EBR Sheriff's Office who was quoted in The Advocate as saying, oh, that's not a big deal because we have agreements where they can be protected and be immune from deportation if they agree to work with the police. How does that work?
Well, what I believe that Miss Casey Rayborn Hicks said in this issue, and she's the spokeswoman for the sheriff's office, what I believe that she meant to say is that there are programs available for victims of crimes, of violent crimes only, which is called a U visa. But U visas, a long time ago, they could perhaps hold your deportation, but today, especially here in courts in Louisiana, it's no longer something that will withhold your deportation, especially because U visas are so backlogged. We're 4 years behind. So people that applied for a U visa because, you know, they have a certain number of visas that are available per year, people that applied 4 years ago are just now receiving their U visa.
And for someone waiting for their visa to be approved, they could still be deported in the meantime,
absolutely,
right?
Yes.
And say, "Oh, come back when your visa's approved." Is basically
absolutely
great. In the meantime, they're back home in Guatemala getting killed or whatever. I want to remind the listeners, you're listening to Wayne Parker on A Pause for Thought here on Baton Rouge Community Radio. We're talking with Natalia Dixon, an immigration attorney here in Baton Rouge, and we're discussing the 287G agreement that Sid Goutreau, our sheriff, signed without telling us and that we're paying for. So give us a call, 343-9927, if you'd like to add to the discussion or ask some questions of Natalia. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
343-9927. Okay, we were talking about people still being willing to come forward and all that, and I'm trying to get back on track here because I got a great memory. It's just short, you know. But thank you for laughing. But what are the benefits to ICE in having local law enforcement do this stuff?
Well, the benefits, I guess they're the only ones drawing any benefits out of it. They say it's a partnership between local enforcement and the federal, the Department of Homeland Security, the federal government. But, well, by partnership, I understand that there's like benefits to both parties, right? But I don't think that's actually happening. We're only taking like the short end of the stick here. So in East Baton Rouge, because of this agreement, we're just being taken advantage of. We're working for the federal government for free, and you know what does ICE get with that? Well, they get us to work for free.
Yeah, and they get a lot of their own work done for free. I'm looking here again at the American Immigration Council report. And they state here that ICE covers the cost of training deputized officers, but state and local governments have to pay the majority of costs associated with the 287G program, including travel, housing, and per diem for officers during training, salaries, overtime, other personal costs, and administrative supplies. Now, that does say here that some of the costs of detention may be reimbursed by the federal government through the state criminal alien assistance program. However, they all go on to state that the government has never fully funded that program. And looking back at this Immigrant Legal Resource Center report, they state here that communities ultimately pay the consequences of immigration enforcement. Some children whose parents or caretakers are taken or deported end up in the child welfare system. So our child welfare system, foster care system get overburdened. And, you know, they also, ICE benefits by having all the paperwork done, all the research done, all the background checks.
And this is one of the things they're saying about the foster care system that gets overloaded with the kiddos. You know, they're taken away from their parents. This is a clear example of that, was that the raid that they had in Mississippi, where they arrested over 280 people. And the immigration attorneys in Mississippi and Louisiana, they all came together, and Professor McGowan, too, in Mississippi also did a great job putting immigration attorneys together to work pro bono towards these folks to help them. But ultimately, you're ripping away children from their parents. Their parents were there working.
They were there working, and they were encouraged to come there by their employers. And you can't tell me that nobody in law enforcement wasn't aware of them. But, you know, it's like, come on, folks. You know, we're all playing the game. Now suddenly you're going to renege on it, you know.
Correct. And, you know, there's always, like, the underlying issues as well as to... many of those factors were also involved in investigation of conditions, work conditions that were not ideal. So it's just it all sounds so very odd to me.
Yeah, it stinks actually, kind of like a chicken processing plant, I suppose. But, yeah, and getting back to the costs though, this one report says here that in February 2017, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez of Harris County, Texas, said he would terminate his agreement. He said that his county spent $675,000 on the program, and he said, "That's it. We're getting out of this thing." And another sheriff in Waukesha County, Wisconsin, Sheriff Eric Severinsen. See, he doesn't give a number here, but he says, "At this time, I don't have the resources to participate with that, nor is our community structure such that I don't know that it was even necessary." Another report here from the University of North Carolina says that one county paid $5.3 million of their taxpayers' money in 287G activities.
Right.
And another county was $4.8 million. And I'm looking at numbers here, 26 million over 5 years for another, county program. That's a lot of money, and we don't even know how much we're spending here in Baton Rouge right now.
Right. It is a lot of money involved in the training and all the circumstances around this program. And obviously, this money is coming from somewhere, and it's from our pockets. We're funding this program. I mean, really, my problem is we were not asked if we wanted to be in this program. And in fact, a lot of people that actually signed this petition against the 287G agreement demonstrated that they're not happy about this agreement. But I haven't heard from folks that were actually in favor of it. So to date, I still haven't heard from them. So I'll be curious to know the amount of people that actually agree with this program, and as opposed to people that do not agree with this program.
Yeah, now that we're aware of it, or at least that people are becoming aware of it, because we didn't even know about it before. We didn't know if we approved or not because we didn't know it existed.
And it's not expenses related to staff only, as to training and all that. We also have the expenses of detaining these people, performing investigation for those allegedly undocumented immigrants that were arrested. We also, before the sheriff's office communicate with ICE that we're holding these people for the very least 48 hours, we're footing this bill. We're paying for the housing, we're paying for their food, for their stay, for the investigation.
Yep.
So it's coming out of our pocket unnecessarily.
Right, okay, and we're, I want to remind listeners again that you're listening to Wayne Parker with a Pause for Thought. I'm speaking with Natalia Dixon, an immigration attorney here in Baton Rouge, and we're talking about our Sheriff's Department enforcing federal law on our dime. 343-9927. Give us a call and share your thoughts, opinions, or ask a question. 343-9927. Now, talking before the show, you mentioned there were actually studies done about whether or not communities became safer as a result of this. What did they indicate?
Exactly. So from what we've seen, it seems like communities did not become any safer. It was actually the opposite. For this lack of trust in local enforcement, and because of this, ties this bond that the community had with the local law enforcement before. Once it's broken, they tend not to report crimes or suspicious activities in their neighborhoods. So I do believe that criminality increases significantly.
Did the studies actually come out and conclude, though, that these programs did not make communities safer?
Yes, and
okay.
I would be interested in because this is one of the arguments that the Sheriff Department proposed, talked to us about. It's that it actually makes our communities safer and decreases criminality. I would be interested in seeing data regarding that and see how much criminality went down because of 287G agreements.
And one of the things you said when you spoke about this last Sunday in front of a group of people was that we need to ask these hard questions of the sheriff. Are you aware of any forums where we could do that? Anything upcoming? Are any of our local activist groups going to call for a forum?
Right. We do have a wonderful nonprofit over here. It's called Vote BR, and they actually ask questions. They do our hard work. They ask the questions that we do not want to ask. So and they propose those questions to the candidates. So I would encourage people that would like to know a little bit more about the program, the 287G program, and want to make any questions about it, to contact the Vote BR folks. And they would certainly be able to help you with that. I would also like to invite people on the 9th of September. It's a day of action. It's going to be next Monday. We will be contacting the Sheriff's Department and requesting the Sheriff Goutreau to end the 287G agreement. And we do have the telephone number here for the Sheriff's Office. We also have the fax number and his email in case y'all would like to contact him it, I could provide it to y'all. The phone number is 225-389-5055. Again, it's 225-389-5055. Or you can also send a fax, 225-389-5032. Or email sgoutreaux, which is GAUTREAUX at ebrso.org. And that would all take place on September 9th. So we invite you to send an email or fax or a letter or make a phone call and request, why are we footing this bill? Why do we have a 287G agreement?
Okay, getting back to my question before they got us to this, what I was asking was, is there a mechanism for calling the sheriff to come and sit in a forum somehow and allow the public to ask questions? Or is there any other authority over the sheriff that we could talk to, and demand that they come listen to us and hear our questions and demand answers?
Right. Well, I think that the best thing to do is just call them and talk to them and say, like, hey, what about this? I don't particularly know of any kind of a forum or anything that will be available anytime soon, but elections are coming up, so they should have something going on here in East Baton Rouge Sheriff. So I encourage people to look for those things and actually contact the sheriff's office and ask them questions.
And I would think, too, ask the candidates ahead of time what they know about these things and let them know there are going to be questions on them when they speak in public, and so they'll be prepared and know something about it instead of just, fobbing it off like,
absolutely.
I support immigration enforcement, blah, blah, blah,
exactly.
and moving on,
And this is an important part of having the power to vote. It's actually to vote conscientiously. It's to be mindful about who you're voting for and what are the ideas that your candidate is bringing to the table. So we don't want things to be done under the table. We don't want any kind of like a gimmicky agreement that you just simply determine that you're going to enter into it without asking your voters, do y'all want this?
And do you want to pay for it? Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm very hesitant when people want to put their hands in my pocket.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing. A lot of the people who would support this sort of program are the ones complaining about big government and we're paying too much money for government and blah, blah, blah. And yet we're spending our tax money on this stuff. Federal laws.
Exactly, and this is usually one of my arguments. If you're not convinced by the humanitarian argument, let me touch your pocket. Let me tell you that this is also very expensive for our parish, and the resources that we're wasting in this program should be directed to other activities in the parish, towards our security, towards safety, and towards our people.
There should be a record somewhere in the East Baton Rouge Parish accounting office or whatever that shows how much money is going to the 287G, isn't there?
Well, I
would imagine
so, and you would imagine that these bills are actually public, right? Since we're paying for this,
right.
They should be public.
Okay, that's something that I might call about, because that would be a very interesting thing to learn. Just how much are we paying for?
I'm counting on you.
So, you'll have to remind me, because like I said, I got a great memory, it's just a bit short. Anyway, there's also some other actions people can take. There is currently, about getting rid of the 287G program here in East Baton Rouge Parish. One is to contact the Foundation for Louisiana, and it's foundationforlouisiana.org. They have a petition on there that you can sign and will be sent to Sheriff Sid Goutreaux, asking him to cancel the 287G agreement. So if you would consider that, go to foundationforlouisiana.org and sign the petition to get rid of 287G. Also, this September 13th, there will be a protest at the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office headquarters. It will be from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. The address is 8900 Jimmy Weddell Drive, and it's sponsored by Indivisible, the Louisiana Capital Region. So those are two actions that we can all take right now. Sign the petition and attend that protest. And also the day of action, September 9th, just give your local sheriff's office a friendly call and ask some questions about 287G. So that sounds really good there. Oh, let's see. Anything else real quickly that you'd like to get out there to the listeners before we wrap this up?
Well, I'm counting on each one of y'all to give the sheriff a call and to just inquire about what's going on here in our parish and how the funding for this program is being used. And if like we said before, if it's not for the humanitarian side of it, let it be for the money, because we would like these resources to be spent here in our community with local enforcement, not working for free for the federal government.
Exactly.
So if y'all could please just go ahead and give the call or send an email or a letter. Just inquire about it. Vote conscientiously. Elections are up, and know your candidate's platform. What kind of policies they're fighting for, and what kind of policies they want to bring to the table and implement here in our parish. This is very important. Voting is it's a huge weapon that we have available here in this country, and it's very important that all of us participate in this process.
There you go. Okay, well, you've been listening to Wayne Parker and Natalia Dixon on A Pause for Thought this evening. We've been talking about the 287 agreement, 287G program that our sheriff is involved in to enforce immigration law here in our parish at yours and my expense. I want to thank you for listening. And thank you, Natalia, for coming on the show.
Thank you, Wayne. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very excited, very humbled to be here today with y'all.
Well, I'm glad, and hopefully you'll have you back, and you'll teach us some more things.
Thank
anyway, that's it. We got to go. You have a good night.